Hey everyone, my name is Kaylee and I'm a program coordinator with Leah's Pantry. I'm here today to teach you how to cook sweet potato noodles with vegetables. It's a dish inspired by japchae, a Korean dish that includes sweet potatoes and vegetables. There are some variations that use seafood, meat, even bean sprouts, but for today we're going to be using just vegetables. It's a really great dish because you can pretty much use any vegetable you have laying around in your kitchen. It's sweet and savory, really delicious. It also holds pretty well, so it's a great dish to bring to a picnic or a potluck, and even to bring to school or work as a lunch. The ingredients for this recipe, as it's written, includes 1 carrot, although I have 2, so I'm going to put 2 in, some green onions, a red bell pepper, garlic, some spinach, shiitake mushrooms. I have shiitake mushrooms, but you could also use any other type of mushroom. Shiitake sometimes is a little bit on the pricey side, so I'll splurge every once in a while for shiitake, but usually I'll just go for the button mushrooms, which are just as good. You're going to need a cabbage. This is a Napa cabbage, so you can see here. And cabbage is a really nutritious vegetable. It comes in a variety of colors. It comes in green, white, purple, although they call it red cabbage. And it's really full of vitamin C, which is great for the immune system, as well as vitamin K, which is necessary in helping our body heal when we have wounds. In addition to the fresh ingredients, you're also going to need some soy sauce. The recipe calls for vegetable oil, but I have olive oil and that's okay. Toasted sesame seeds if you have them. Toasted sesame oil. Some honey. And of course, the noodles. So japchae is usually made with sweet potato noodles. That might be hard to find in a grocery store. So if you can't find the sweet potato noodles, that's totally okay. You could also go for whole wheat spaghetti, the thin type, or the option that I found at my grocery store was this pad thai rice noodle. So this will work as well. So we're going to go ahead and prep all of the vegetables so that they're ready when we start stir frying the noodles and the vegetables together. Okay, so we're going to start by chopping our Napa cabbage. And if you've gotten this from the store, it's best to give it a nice rinse. But what's nice about cabbage is it has all these layers. So what you could do is just peel the outer layers off to expose the nice clean layers that are inside, and then you don't necessarily have to rinse it. So the best way to cut the cabbage is to take off the bottom stem. And we want to get pretty thin slices. The best way to do that is to cut the Napa cabbage in half so we can get a nice flat surface to cut on. That way it won't be rolling around when we're cutting it. Place the halves on their flat side like so, and then go through lengthwise and cut through the cabbage. You can make thin slices, you can make thick slices. It really just depends on your preference. and sometimes the recipe that you're preparing it for. In this case, a slice about this thin will do. So we need 4 cups of thinly sliced cabbage. So I'm going to go ahead, and cut both halves. All right, then I'll place this in a large bowl. Now I'm gonna cut the carrot. So I've washed these already. A lot of people will sometimes peel the outer layer, but the outer layer is actually full of nutrients. And I don't think there's any real purpose other than aesthetic to peel it. So I'm gonna actually keep it on. So we want to cut the carrot into small matchstick pieces. So what I typically do is I'll cut the carrot in half, and then I'll cut it lengthwise to get that flat surface. Put it on the flat surface and cut small, skinny matchsticks lengthwise like this. If they're not as thin as you thought they would come out, you can go through and cut them again to the thinness that you desire. But I think these are okay. I might actually make them a little shorter, like that. So I'll go ahead and do that with both of my carrots. Great. I'm gonna move my carrots. So I like to keep my cutting board clean because it makes it easier to chop, and it's also safer. When you have a lot of clutter on your cutting board, it can create a little bit more of a difficult area to cut in, and then there's more potential to cut yourself. I'm gonna wash my red pepper. All right, so now we're gonna cut our red pepper. People have different techniques of cutting a red pepper. Mine is just to slice it kind of around the pepper like so. And then I take the 2 halves that I just cut and I split it open. Now I take my knife, and I actually don't need this big of a knife for this. I'll use a smaller paring knife. And then I cut out the middle with all the seeds. Compost that. And then I take out the flesh. So again, this is one of the things that a lot of people do just for aesthetic reasons, but this is actually full of nutrients as well. So you can keep it if you want. My mom always taught me to get rid of it. So I'm going to stick to my old habits and get rid of that white flesh. Okay. Now we want these cut into pretty thin slices. So I'm just gonna go through like so and cut slices that look about that thin. Again, this is all personal preference. If you wanted to have larger pieces, you could chop them into little squares. I think that the long skinny pieces goes nicely with the thin noodles. They kind of wrap around the noodles that way. Just get incorporated into the dish a little bit better. All right. So up next, we have our green onions. And what you want to do with the green onions is you want to cut them into 2-inch pieces. So I'm going to take a few at a time, or a couple at a time. I'm going to take off the root. And peel off any brown pieces, any brown layers, any mushy layers that may be on the green onion. And then I'll go ahead and I'll cut my 2-inch pieces. We're going to be using the white part, the light green parts, as well as the dark green ends. All parts of the green onion are edible and add a lot of flavor to any dish. However, what I do, because the dark green ends cook a lot quicker than the white ends, I usually separate them, and I'll put the lighter ends in first while I'm cooking, and then I'll put the green parts in maybe just a minute before I finish cooking. That way they don't get overcooked. All right, and now for our mushrooms. The recipe calls for 8 shiitake mushrooms. So let's see here, I may have a few more than 8, and that's okay. What we're gonna do is we're going to slice them thinly. So you can just set them on their top like so, and cut pieces that are about that thin. Okay. Now all we have left is our garlic. So this recipe calls for 4 cloves of garlic. The garlic is personal preference. It really brings a lot of flavor to any dish that you're using it in. And I love garlic, so I'm definitely going to use all 4 cloves. Maybe you're not a garlic fan, you know, you can do 3 instead, 2, whatever pleases you. And the best way to peel the garlic, because it can take a lot of time, is to grab a knife, put the flathead down on the garlic as so, and then just give it a little smash, or maybe 2. That will break the peel and make it a lot easier to get the outer peel off of the clove. And once we have our garlic cloves peeled, we're going to mince them. The technique that I use is similar to cutting an onion. What you're going to do is you're going to cut lengthwise on the clove. And so you see there's a point here. I'm going to leave that point intact, and I'm just going to cut little slivers, lengthwise slivers, into the garlic clove like so, without cutting all the way through. So again, I'm leaving that point intact. And then I'm going to cut lengthwise but horizontally through the clove a few times. And next, I'm going to cut perpendicular to the lengthwise cuts that I already cut through the clove. So when I do that, I get these nice little minced bits, and I don't waste any of the clove. And these are perfect size mince pieces to put in a stir fry. If you mince them too small, they can easily burn. So we don't want that. Okay, so the next step is to cook our noodles. And you can cook the noodles according to the package directions. This package says to bring 4 to 5 quarts of water to a boil, add the noodles and boil for 7 minutes until tender, and drain using cold water. So I'm gonna go ahead and cook my noodles according to those directions. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes. I'm going to test one of the noodles. And they're still pretty hard, so I think we're gonna need that extra 2 minutes. All right, I'm gonna do one more taste test. See if they're cooked by now. Oop, they're sticking together a bit. And they're nice and soft, so I'm gonna turn the heat off, bring it to my strainer, and then rinse it with cold water. Okay, so I've rinsed the noodles and I've rinsed them with cold water, which is especially good for these rice noodles because the cold water will prevent them from cooking further and will rinse the starch off. Now the recipe says to add your 2 tablespoons of sesame oil to the noodles. So I'm actually going to take it out of the strainer, put it back in the pot. And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of the sesame oil to the noodles. And adding oil to cooked noodles is great because it prevents the noodles from sticking together while they're cooling and you're preparing all of your other ingredients. So after I've done that, I'm just going to give it a quick stir to coat all of the noodles. And then I'm going to set my noodles aside. Now we can start cooking the vegetables. We're going to cook the cabbage first. So I'm going to turn the heat on to about medium-high. Actually, probably about high. And then I'm going to put in a tablespoon of my oil. Remember, the recipe calls for vegetable oil, but you can also use olive oil, sunflower oil, avocado oil, whatever kind of oil you have at home. So I'm going to toss in the 4 cups of the thinly sliced Napa cabbage. And it may look like a lot of cabbage right off the bat, but the cabbage will cook down. So just give it a little time and let the heat work its magic. Okay, so it's been a little bit over 3 minutes and my cabbage has cooked down a bit. So now I'm gonna add my red pepper. And the mushrooms. I'm actually also going to add my carrots because the carrots, they take a while to get soft. All right, I'm going to stop fidgeting with it for a little bit and just let it do its thing. Just remember to stir it occasionally so that all the vegetables get evenly cooked. All right, so it looks like they've wilted down a bit. I'm gonna add my garlic into the pan. I also found a serrano pepper. I like heat in my dishes, so I'm gonna add a minced serrano pepper, which isn't in the ingredient list, but will add a really nice spice to this recipe. Give it a stir to evenly distribute the garlic and the serrano pepper. Next, I'm gonna add the light pieces of the green onion. Remember, we're saving the darker pieces towards the end of the recipe because they take less time to cook. This dish is packed with vegetables and filled with a ton of different nutrients. I mean, you can just tell there's a variety of nutrients in this dish by looking at the colors that we have. Okay, so it's been about a minute since I added the green onion in. So now I'm gonna go ahead and add in my spinach, which is not gonna take a long time to cook at all. It's really just, we need enough time just to wilt the spinach. And with the spinach, I'm also gonna put in the green tips of the green onions. You can kind of just fold these greens into the rest of the vegetable mixture. Okay, so the spinach is wilting. I am going to take that as a sign that I need to turn my heat off. The vegetables are definitely cooked down enough. And now we are going to add in the sauce. All right, so I got my tablespoon out and the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So I got the 2 tablespoons of the soy sauce in there, and now I'm going to add my honey. The honey is really going to complement the salty flavor of the soy sauce. So you'll get that sweet and savory flavor complex. Okay, so now I'm gonna give it a real good stir because I want the honey and the soy sauce to really mix in and cover or coat all of the vegetables. And once I've done that, now I'm going to add our noodles in. So sometimes stirring the noodles is easier with 2 spatulas or spoons. Just gonna use the 2 spatulas to mix the vegetables into the noodles. Okay, this recipe also calls for cracked pepper. Freshly cracked is butter because it holds a little bit more flavor. However, if you just have, pepper in a shaker, you can totally use that. So the recipe called for 2 tablespoons. I would suggest 3. I think it needs just a little bit of acidity. So you could use a lime, which would be preferable. I wish I had a lime, but I don't. I have a lemon. I'm just gonna slice this really quick. And add a little bit of the lemon juice just to give it a little bit of an acidic taste, which will really balance out the saltiness of the soy sauce. All right, let's plate this up. And then you can go ahead and top it with those toasted sesame seeds. If you have some chopped cilantro, that would be really nice. And I am a sriracha fan, so I'm gonna go ahead and drizzle a little sriracha on top. Get a little bit more of a kick. This is really good. It is savory, a little sweet. Definitely spicy from the sriracha and the serrano I put in there, which I love. And the tang of the lemon on top, I think, is really the cherry on top of the sundae. I could eat this every day. It's very nutritious. Again, this will store really nicely, so you can keep it in your fridge. You can bring it, to work or school for lunch. It's a great dish to bring to a picnic or any sort of gathering. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and happy cooking to you all.